and I'll be your host today. And I'm also the features editor here at Call Center Helper. We've got a great topic for you today, where we'll be looking at 5 sure ways to improve quality monitoring. And I've got great speakers to bring to you too. But quickly, just a first slide to remind you of our future webinars, in case you want to kind of log on and see a few more. There's still time to register for those. And you can go to www.callcenterhelper.com/webinars to check those out. But back on to today's webinar, and I've got 3 great speakers to bring to you. The first one is from Elevate Performance, and that's Miranda Kane. How are you doing today, Miranda? Oh.
Really good, thank you, Charlie.
Excellent stuff. And could you just give everybody in the audience a little bit of background about your role within contact centers?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Miranda Kane and I'm Managing Director for Elevate Performance. I work with a group of 7 others and we have a combined tenure of 75 years of previous experience in a former consulting business, which was born out of the contact centre space. So much of our work continues to be in the call centre environment, working across sector and at all levels in the organisation. All things people related.
Excellent. And those people related things that bring to you great expertise in this subject. As great expertise to our other 2 speakers, the second of which is Tom Vandewell from Intelligentics. How are you doing today, Tom?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me today.
Excellent. It's great to have you. And for everybody again in the audience, could you give a little bit of background into your kind of role within contact centers?
Yes, absolutely. My marketing people tell me that I'm a pioneer in QA, and that just makes me feel old. But I've been doing quality assessment since the early 1990s, and I've been doing it for over 25 years. As Intelligentics helps our clients measure and improve the customer experience, both through research, which helps our clients understand what their customers expect when they call, but also then quality assessment. We are both a third-party QA provider, but we also consult with a lot of clients just to help and make sure that their QA program is measuring the right stuff in the right way so that they have the best impact.
Excellent. And it's great to have you here, Tom. And our third pioneer, I'm going to steal that word, pioneer of quality today is Lauren Maggio from Knights. How are you doing, Lauren?
Great. I love that introduction, Charlie. Thanks.
Excellent stuff. And just for everybody who, I mean, most people probably know a little bit about NICE already, but can you tell the audience a little bit about your role within the company?
Sure. So I am a product marketing team manager, and I'm responsible for our analytics and quality solutions, as well as customer journey, anything to do with analytics. And I'm very excited to be part of this event today. They're always very good. Been in the industry for over 25 years, so I'm looking forward to our discussion today.
Excellent. Yeah, and it's great to have each of you joining me today. And while we'll officially go live at 2 o'clock, for everybody who's logging in and is hearing us speaking now, this is just a quick, nice little introduction for everybody to introduce you to our speakers and a little bit about the format of today's webinar, which I can take you through now. And a key part of our webinars is that we like to make them as interactive as possible. We like to have you kind of sharing your tips and sending in your questions for our panelists. And you can do so by going to our chat room. And to do that, just open up a new tab, or maybe even just get out your phone and just type in cch.chat and you can get talking to us in there. Once you're in the chat room, you have an added bonus of being able to download our speakers' slides, so you can really kind of hone in on some of the key learnings that are presented to you today. And you can also take part in our quiz, for which there's a bottle of champagne or a box of chocolates on as prizes on offer. So it's another nice little incentive to be there. And what I always like to do when I'm watching these webinars is to have the chat room on one side of my screen and the presentations on the other. So I'm staying in touch with kind of all the kind of key learnings that are being shared. And also, if you want to reflect on today's webinar, the replay will be available later this afternoon, as well as the slides on our website. So to watch that, just go to www.callcenterhelper.com/recorded-webinars. But the first thing that we are asking to our audience today is where are you dialing in from? I'm in Monmouth today. Yeah, so it'd be really great if you could tell us where you're dialing in from too. How is the weather today where you are in Guildford, Miranda?
So temperamental, I think, would be the best way of describing it. So we've had some really bright spells and some rain. So, but little glimpses of blue sky. So yeah.
Yeah,
Mixed.
excellent. And I'm sure Tom and Lauren, you'll make us jealous of where the weather is, how the weather is like with you.
Yes, I'm coming from the most amazing, I call it the most amazing little town in America, the Pella, Iowa, and it's been beautiful the last week. Sunny, warm, highs in the 70s. It's going to be a little bit cooler than that today, Fahrenheit.
Nice, yes, definitely making us jealous here in rainy, grey England indeed. So let's just take a quick look and see where people joining us are coming in from today. We have Rachel dialing in from Cheltenham. We have Paula in Glasgow. We have Tom in Salisbury. We have Brandon in East Peoria. I think that's Illinois. We have Robert in Sussex. We have, all these are coming in quickly. Jennifer from Florida. We have Deborah from Ontario, Canada. Apologies for that presentation. James in Chester. We have Nick in Atlantic Canada. We have Virginia in Canada. We have Laura from Peterborough, and lots more places coming in there. So it's great to see such a great variety of places that you're all dialing in from today. And our second question that I'm going to put to all of you in the chat room is, in a few words, what was the last thing, the last change that you've made to your quality program? Maybe you updated your scorecard, increased the number of interactions analyzed, or added new technology. It'd be great to kind of hear what's the last change that you made to your QA program. I don't know, Miranda, I'll ask you first, kind of what kind of things you would expect to come up here.
Sorry, that just glitched for me.
Oh, apologies for that. So I was just wondering what kind of things would you expect the audience to say in response to the question of what was the last change that you made to your quality program?
Well, there may be a difference between what I expect and what I'd like to hear. I'd hope that there's a wholesale shift to a much more focus around metrics that are aligned to delivering truly great customer experience is what I'd like to see.
Excellent. And Tom, would you go along with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And Lauren?
Yes. What can I say? I have to agree. I'm jumping on the bandwagon.
Excellent. Let's take a look at how people are responding in the chat room. So Greta said that they recently updated the scorecard, which is great. Will said they increased the audits monitored, which is also great. We have Daryl, who said redesigned around 3 core pillars: customer needs, customer ease, and how the customer felt, and underpin that with business requirements. That sounds a very good strategy to me. Nicola also says updated scorecard, and Robin says shift scoring to patient experience rather than process focus. So lots of interesting ideas there coming in. But now, as we've hit the top of the hour at 2 o'clock, I'd like to formally introduce everybody to today's webinar. I will be your host. My name is Charlie, and I'm the features editor here at Call Center Helper. And today we'll be looking at 5 surefire quality monitoring techniques for your contact center. And on our panel, we have 3 great speakers to bring to you. Our first speaker is Miranda Kane from Elevate Performance. How are you doing today, Miranda?
Really good. Thank you, Charlie. Really excited to be here.
Excellent. And I was just wondering if you could give those in our audience who are just joining us a little bit of background into your role within contact centers.
Absolutely. So I'm the managing director for Elevate, and we're a small but perfectly formed consulting business with a particular lens around all things CX. As a group of 8, we have 75 years of combined tenure from a previous consulting business. The majority of our work was in the call center space. Our focus very much around CX and people. So mindsets, behaviors and skills in relation to CX.
Excellent stuff, and a really great presentation to bring to us today, as well as does our second speaker, Tom Vandewell from Intelligentics. How are you doing today, Tom?
I'm doing great, Charlie. Thanks for having me back again.
Always a pleasure to have you. And just for those of us in the audience, who haven't come across you on our webinars before, could you give a little bit of background about kind of your history within contact centers?
Yep, absolutely. Intelligentics helps our clients measure and improve service quality, and that includes both customer research as well as quality monitoring. And so I have been in the QA business helping clients in contact centers since the early 1990s.
Awesome. And you were referred to as a pioneer earlier, so
Yes,
I'm gonna.
that's what it just makes me feel old, but that's what they call me.
No, it's nice. I like the term, and I will call our third speaker, Lauren from NICE, a pioneer in quality too. How are you doing today, Lauren?
Great, Charlie. Thanks for having me.
It's always great to have you too, Lauren. Could you just give everybody in the audience a little bit of background as well within your kind of role in contact centers and QA?
Sure. So I am from NICE, and I'm with the group that handles analytics and quality. But NICE has a broad scope of contact center technology and services as well. My particular role is manage a team of product marketing members, and we focus on trying to deliver best practices to our customers when it comes to analytics and quality.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And 3 really great presentations from all of you coming up. So really looking forward to watching those again. But just a little bit of housekeeping before we do get on with our presentations. The replay and slides of today's webinar will be available later this afternoon at www.callcenterhelper.com/recorded-webinars. And you can go to that web link to catch up on all of today's key learnings. Also, if you're not already in our chat room, it would be really great if you could log in, and you can do that through cch.chat. We like to make these webinars as interactive as possible. We like to have you sending in your tips and questions to our panelists in between their presentations. So yeah, if you could move your way into the chat room as well, maybe on a different tab or your phone, that would be really great. And what I like to do when I'm in the chat room is to have the chat room on one side of my screen and the presentations on the other, so I can kind of keep my focus on both as they go through. And the final bit about the chat room is that you can also download the presentation, the presenter's slides after the webinar, and you can also join the quiz, which I'll come back to later. And the top tip that gets sent in to us, or the top question, the winner of that will get a bottle of champagne or a box of chocolates. So a nice little incentive there. But before we go into our first presentation today, just have a quick poll to bring to you. So I'm just going to launch that for everybody in the audience, and it would be great to hear to see the responses to this poll. And that is, when did your company last change the questions on its quality scorecard? Was it the past week, the past month, the past year, the past 5 years, or never? It'll be really interesting to see the range of kind of ideas here. I don't know, Miranda, if you kind of have any thoughts as to what you might expect here.
My gut says past year.
That's it'd be interesting to see the responses.
Not that I'm trying to influence anyone's voting.
Excellent. I will see you. Let's take a look at what was said. So I'll share the results with everybody. And you were indeed correct in saying that, Miranda. Yeah, almost half of contact centers doing that. It's really great to see, actually, there's some people doing that within the past month as well, with 26%, and some saying 9%. There's a large range, so I think that kind of reflects the range within the industry. But yeah, interesting poll question to start us all off there. And now I think that leads in quite nicely to your presentation, Miranda. So I'll pass over to you now and let you share your presentation with everyone.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Just share my screen. Is everybody seeing that full screen?
I'm seeing the notes at the moment. Yeah,
there we go.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so big thank you, Charlie, to you and all the team at Call Centre Helper for inviting me to participate today. And as I've sort of briefly outlined, I have the pleasure of leading Elevate Performance. And our focus is very much around all things people in the context of CX. And much of our work is in the call centre space across all levels. And the work that we do is essentially sector as well as not just sector agnostic, but also sort of metric agnostic. So for us, a client may typically come to us and want to talk about, it could be a really light aspiration or a significant aspiration. So they might say, we want to just improve our customer service. They may have a larger aspiration that says, actually, we want to be featured in the top 10 rankings for the ICS, for example. So actually, the first piece of work we would do within our discovery phase is really look to explore the aspiration in relation to where they are today. So, for example, if somebody wants to be seen as an organisation that puts customers at the centre of their organisation, then we'd be looking to see whether actually is that the rhetoric that plays out day to day. So the conversations that take place, so whether that's from a performance perspective with a member of staff, are they aligned to meeting that customer expectation that we're setting with that rhetoric? So what's truly driving your quality metrics? So is everything that you're professing, I guess would be a good term, really have the customer at the centre, or actually does that stuff typically sit more in the sort of productivity or efficiency metrics? It's interesting, some of the chat contributions that came up earlier that says we are seeing a big shift in terms of that focus truly towards the customer focus. And I think that comes as no surprise given the journey we've been on over the last year in the world. That sort of service becomes really key. So we'd be asking around, are the quality lenses within the organisation truly aligned to the customer, in the sense that if we ask an organisation what they stand for, but we ask customers what they experience, I suspect in many cases what we'd get would be very different views played back. And ultimately, are you getting the outcomes that you're looking for? And we would look to sort of deep dive in terms of where they're not and how they're not. I think one of the challenges is that the world of metrics is a minefield, and many are focused on commercial priorities and efficiencies, and the term quality is a really subjective statement depending on who you speak to. So for us, what this often throws up is what we would describe as a you say you do gap, and the work to do is bridge that. So it's less about there being a right or wrong metric, but making sure that the work you do, so how people show up, how they're encouraged to behave, is aligned to the outcome that you're looking to achieve. What's really come to the fore over the last few years is that customers talk much more from a heart-led perspective. So a customer's assessment on the experience they have will be as much about how they're made to feel, which again doesn't align to to a lot of the metrics that we would typically be focused on. And a single customer interaction can significantly impact how that person views your organisation forever. I've got an example actually of a client we've worked with. Where we were, as part of our discovery phase, we were running a focus group, and we were fortunate to have a group of agents who were unexpectedly candid. And what they shared with us, and they were working in the digital channel, was they were essentially lifting and dropping verbatims from the company FAQs in response to customer inquiries. And what that unearthed was that they discovered that they almost couldn't fail a quality assessment if that's what they did. Clearly, you can see that there could be a distinct gap between whether those responses were truly responding to the need raised by the customer. So what that opens up is the that actually there's something around the culture that you've created where people end up more focused on keeping themselves safe actually, and not wanting to find themselves in a performance management situation, than truly being able to engage with that customer. And sometimes if that means deviating from a process, doing that if it's the right thing. So part of the work we do, which isn't the focus for today, but is around creating that environment where people can truly show up and do their best work. And that's much more aligned to getting the true customer outcome that they're looking for. If you've established that you're clear that you're focusing on the right metrics for the outcome that you're looking for, but also what you say to the world is what they can expect from you as an organization, we believe that supporting your people in terms of skills and behaviors, as well as the environment, is key. And for us, coaching sits at the center of that. And that's not a once a month in a performance review or once a week. That's about really having coaching as an ongoing part of just every day. So one of the things we wanted to share today is just 3 little coaching skills. And actually what we love about these is that they're really simple, easily deployable, and they are super sticky. So the first one is shrink the change. The change in any regard can be difficult, and particularly if you think about performance and you're trying to get somebody from point A to point B, often human beings can perceive the change to be too big, overwhelming almost. And actually what that does is hugely impact their motivation going in. So it's almost like they've half given up before they've started. So we talk about shrinking that change. And if you take for example, a 20% increase requirement in a level of performance, breaking that down, and you kind of, rather than talking about the 20%, talk about a 1% increase per day. And over the course of 4 weeks, that would get somebody to where they needed to be. This stuff applies in life as well, which is great. And typically this approach is taken to weight loss, and sometimes working with people using non-work related examples gets them to really understand the concept. That shrink the change works really well. ESP is actually one of my favorite kind of techniques in a sense, because I think for 2 reasons. One, it puts the onus very much back in terms of the responsibility to the business and the people leader in terms of the role they play in supporting the development of their people. So it's often performance management can feel like just a download of what you're not doing right, what needs to be different, and by when. And ESP stands for explain, show and practice. So one, it forces me as a people leader to really articulate the change that I'm looking to see and what good looks like and why, and more importantly, the how. So the explain element covers that. Show also puts the responsibility on me as a leader to role model what it is through showing, through discussion, what it is that I'm what that would look like. So again, not just telling them to go off and do something, but really bringing that to life. And practice, that doesn't have to be formal role play. That can simply be in the context of a conversation over a cup of coffee where we're talking about scenarios. So typically inquiries that might come in or challenges that we face and how that might be addressed, and allows the individual in a safe environment to land in a way that they might articulate a response in a way that feels authentic. So it's not just lifting and dropping somebody else's language. So that would be explain, show and practice. The last one is praise progress, and links really well to shrink the change. So again, rather than somebody going off and they've got a prescribed period in which to fix a range of challenges potentially, looking for opportunities to catch them doing it right, and those little opportunities to recognize and acknowledge and encourage keep people motivated on a course of action. And I think that so often it feels like the topic of performance is typically deficit focused. And we think it's as important, if not more, to focus on when people are doing the right things and drawing their attention to that and keeping them on the trajectory that they're on. So they would be our 3 little coaching tips to take away. So our 5 tips. First of all, the clarity in terms of what it is that you're trying to achieve. And so if there is a you say you do gap, closing it, getting really clear around that. And then the 3 tips: shrink the change, explain, show, practice, and praise progress. Thank you. And I hand back to you, Charlie.
Excellent, great. Thank you for that, Miranda. Lots of really, really great stuff there. I'll just share my screen back so everybody can see my presenter slides. But yeah, lots of really great ideas, and it would be really great if everybody in our audience also could note down the kind of what they like best in just a few words about Miranda's presentation. For me, I really liked kind of the idea of shrinking the change that you were talking about, not just telling somebody to improve by 20%, but just aiming to make 1% improvements day after day. I thought that was really great. I love the ESP acronym that you used as well, kind of explaining to somebody why they should change before you show them how to do it, and practice. I think, you know, often we just say how to do something, we don't tell people why they should do things, so that they don't really have the purpose in their work, and that's much less motivating. I thought that was great. And also catching people doing the right things, I thought was a very interesting thing. And if you can catch people in the moment, that's a really great idea for motivating people as well through quality. So yeah, lots of really great ideas there. So thanks for that, Miranda. And let's take a look at some of the top tips and questions that came in during your presentation. So the first question that's coming from Wendy is, what differences have you found in quality monitoring during COVID in terms of advisors having to work from home instead of the office? I don't know if you want to take this one on, Miranda.
So what I would say is that as a general rule, so obviously we have lots of different clients and their approaches would be different, is that I think certainly at the front end of the pandemic, people sort of were just, organisations were just happy if, you know, calls were being answered and, you know, things were sort of staying on track. So I think there was almost a lens came off of quality. That's borne out in terms of our insight from the experience that customers were having as well, that said there definitely was a drop in terms of the quality of customer experience. I think that's levelling out, and to nod back to the contributions to the chat at the front end, I think people are now, and lots talked about the work they've done in the last year, is kind of saying we've ridden out the banner of what we can hide behind from a COVID perspective, and now we've really got to get back to the basics and getting you know, this stuff right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an interesting topic that we could talk about all day, but we'll quickly move on to the next question, which is coming from Brandon, and that is, what advice do you have for beginning to develop quality and KPI scorecard? I'll pass this one on to you, Tom. I don't know if you have any thoughts on this one.
Yes. In fact, one of the things that I think the first question to ask is really looking at what are we trying to drive with the QA program, because there could be different answers that lead you in different directions. Some QA programs are really focused on compliance because of security and regulatory things that they have to maintain, and that could be the thrust. The most common one, obviously, is trying to improve the customer experience, but there are also QA programs that we're trying to really build a good culture, to reward agents for doing a good job, and really kind of improving the enthusiasm and positive reinforcement. So all of those different outcomes could drive a completely different kind of quality program. So it's really good to start with, what do we want to achieve?
Yeah, I think that's a key question for lots of things in the contact center. What are we trying to achieve? I think that's a great, lots of great advice there. So next tip is coming from Alex, who says, work with your frontline agents to help align the questions and outcomes for your framework to the CSAT and NPS questions asked. This way you'll keep your staff more focused, as they'll feel more involved, and there's a clear link to the customer experience impacts. Do you think this is a great tip here, Lauren?
I'm muted, thanks. Yes, actually, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about this, so I'll expand on it in a few minutes.
Yeah, I won't make you give the game away.
Yeah, thanks.
Give the game away quite. Excellent stuff. So got a couple more tips that have come in. Lots of really great stuff coming through the chat room. So thanks everybody for sending in your tips and questions. Wendy said, recruit quality champions within your frontline advisors to help champion the cause and help link between advisors and the QA team. I think that's a really nice one. The next one is coming from Robin, who says, we recently moved to evaluating based on the previous month's score, and this determines how many evaluations are done for the current month. We found it very effective at focusing our QA resources to where they are needed most. I think, yeah, lots of really interesting tips coming through the chat room, so keep sending them in. But for now, let's move on to our next presentation. And yeah, Tom, you're up next, so I will pass over to you and let you share your presentation.
All right, here we go. So at the 5 surefire techniques we're talking about today, I have numbers 3 and 4. However, under number 3, I'm actually going to share 5 things. So leave it to our friends at Call Center Helper to go above and beyond and give you even more than you expected. So good job, Charlie and Rachel. Appreciate that. One of the things that I want to start with here is understanding what I call the principle of rules and exceptions. Customer service processes and procedures are usually set up to address the most typical customer interactions, the ones that drive the most common scenarios that come into your call center. And QA, likewise, is usually designed to assess and drive consistency and quality with those kind of general rule, everyday interactions and how they're handled. But oftentimes, the things that are really creating acute pain, both for your agents and for customers, are the exceptional situations to the rule. In fact, I just saw in the chat room a minute ago somebody saying, hey, how do we work with people as a bank in these tough economic times and showing empathy? Well, that's kind of an exceptional situation based on the times right now. And so what I find often is that your QA program may not address some of the exceptional situations that are driving customer dissatisfaction and creating problems for your quality and customer satisfaction. So it can be very helpful to do special assessments. And what I mean by special assessments is you do a special assessment a one-time, and you take a type of phone call and you look at just that scenario. You break down what's happening in the scenario and try and figure out why is this happening and how can we deal with it better. Let me give you some examples of this. Number 1, unresolved calls. So a situation where your customer is having to make multiple contacts in order to get their issue resolved. Your quality program should always kind of have as part of it, did this issue get resolved? Or were we going to get back to the customer with the answer? Or did we require the customer to have to make another contact in order to get the issue resolved? Let me give you a quick piece of data from Intelligentix. This is data from an actual client of ours. And what you're seeing here is on the left, the chart on the left shows when we asked the customer, how many contacts did it take for you to get your issue resolved? 70% said it was just one and done, which is what we want. 94.6%, if you look at the chart on the right, of those who said they had one contact resolution were satisfied or very satisfied overall with the company. The 15% who said it took 2 contacts, now look, only 80% said that they were satisfied or very satisfied with the client overall. So you've got about a 15-point penalty just from those situations that take 2 contacts instead of 1. When you get to 3, it drops to 63.3% and even more for 4 or more. So a great special assessment is going to say, all right, let's identify those calls that take more than one contact, and let's just listen to a bunch of them to figure out what's the common thread. What are the things that we can learn from the situations that are driving multiple contacts? Now, in doing a special assessment, one of the things that I want to remind you is that, you know, you can't just take a couple of them and then make general assumptions about all of them. You want at least 30 calls to get over sort of a minimum statistical threshold. You know, depending on the size and volume of your calls, maybe, you know, 50 to 100 would be even better. But you wanted to have at least 30 to diminish any of the outliers. Another great special assessment would be not just getting outside of the call, putting yourself in the shoes of the customer and taking a look at the customer journey. From the moment they say, I need to contact this company, where do I find the phone number, to the point that I call in, hey, if I call in after hours, what's my experience? What does the message say? What are my options at that point? How do we handle that? Navigating the IVR. What's the ease of doing it? What's the experience in doing it? Can we take something that is usually a frustration for customers and actually make it sort of fun and entertaining and sort of diminish the penalty? What's the experience of being on hold like? And what about follow-up correspondence? So the call is over, but I have to get an email. What does that email say? Does it give me the information that I need? By looking at the entire journey, you help to understand things outside of the agent's control that may be impacting their satisfaction with that phone call. Another example would be what I call outlier calls. In most QA programs, what happens is the analysts, whether you have a quality team or you have supervisors doing it, they usually gravitate to measuring average calls. So if our average talk time is 5 minutes, 300 seconds, you usually find that most of the calls that get scored and assessed as part of the program are 5 minutes or less, because I'll always take a shorter call because it's faster for me to assess. Very rarely are you going to take one that's longer because I don't have time for that. Well, that means that you've got call types like really long calls. If you've got a 30-minute call or a 25-minute call, most analysts are like, I'm not listening to that. I'm not wasting my time. But there's an important thing to really think about. If we can take a bunch of long calls, listen to them, figure out how do we reduce the average call time, diminish the number of those outlier calls, you could both improve customer satisfaction and save money if you have fewer long calls that are driving up your costs. It could also be escalated customers. That's the one everybody worries about, that everybody struggles with. So flag calls with escalated customers, listen to a whole bunch of them and learn what was driving the escalation, because I guarantee you it's probably a communication breakdown before the call. And then how did we handle it, and what are the things that we learned to do or not do from just a special assessment of just angry callers. How about exceptionally long holds or multiple holds? Customers more and more today don't want to be placed on hold multiple times. So why do we have to? And what do we need to reduce the number of holds that we have to place the customer on? Same thing with transfers in and out. Because customers want one call resolution, but increasingly they want answers without being transferred. So why do we have to transfer? How can we cut down the number of transfers? And how can we diminish the dissatisfaction that happens when we do have to transfer? All of these are great things to kind of dig into on a one-by-one special assessment. And then you might have specific procedural scenarios. If you are a company that has compliance, regulatory, or security issues, you might want to dig into the calls that are especially important to manage from that compliance or security procedure, and just what are we doing well, what are we doing consistently, where is it that we're missing? And that can drive some very important training and coaching. Products or situations that have special handling, and also transferring to correct person and department. Misdirected calls happen a lot in contact centers. So digging into why and where are our team missing it, where are they going with misdirected calls, can be important to just identifying how can we address that and improve it. Departments outside of customer support. If you are transferring to another department, is that department, do they have any kind of quality process? And a lot of times what I find is that when the transfers usually go to a tier 2 or maybe a more senior team who feels like they shouldn't have to be monitored. It's just those, minions in tier 1 that are taking the frontline call. But hey, if that person is talking to a customer, we need to find out what kind of service they're providing as well. So that could be a really good special assessment that will at least help you gauge whether that's actually a good thing or a bad thing. I just got another minute here. So the fourth thing I want to talk about is the Secret Shopper Initiative. Now this takes some work, but we've had clients that have done this and we've helped clients with it. What you basically do is you create dummy customer accounts in your system. And then you determine a scenario that is driving dissatisfaction or lack of resolution or inconsistent handling. You have your secret shoppers randomly place calls as this customer that you've dummied up in your system, and you repeat the same scenario over time as different agents pick up the phone and address the same scenario. Then you compare how the CSRs manage this particular call type, and from that, you can find where do we have issues of consistency? Where are we missing the boat as far as doing it the right way? And it will help you to identify where do we need to really focus our training and coaching to make sure that everybody is doing it correctly. Now, it takes work, but for certain call centers, this can be a huge opportunity and can pay off in a lot of ways. So that is, that's my presentation. I'm right under 10 minutes. I made it, Charlie, in 10 minutes. Happy to take some questions.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Tom. That was so much great advice there. I'll share some of my top takeaways actually with everybody in a moment. But just quickly first, I'm going to direct everybody who's not yet in the chat room just to go into the chat room, because we'll be shortly moving onto our quiz, and to take part in the quiz, in which you can win a bottle of champagne or a box of chocolates. Yeah, you need to be in the chat room. So if you're not already, either follow this link, cch.chat, or if you fancy a bit more of a challenge, you can take on this long one that will take you to the chat room there. And also for all of you that are already in the chat room, if you could just put in the 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about Tom's presentation? For me, there were so many things. I think kind of the key one that you said right at the start there was that make sure your scorecard includes whether or not the issue was resolved. Extending QA beyond the confines of a call was a very interesting one as well, actually, of kind of testing the IVR as well, and kind of the follow-up process. And then you were talking about the outlier calls and the kind of your point around maybe we only test the short calls because that's all we have time for, but even though there's more values, I thought that was really great. The kind of calls with high transfer rates and the exceptional, the escalations, circumstances were great, and the secret shopper stuff was great in picking those situations which often lead to higher dissatisfaction rates. So yeah, again, as with Miranda's presentation, lots of really great takeaways for everybody there. So I'm going to cross over to the quiz now. You just need to use, to vote on these questions, by the way, just use the A, B, C, D buttons at the bottom left of the screen in the chat room. Yeah, so I can see we have 136 people logged in. So I will get going with this quiz right now. And the winner, don't forget, gets a bottle of champagne or a box of chocolates. So let's go ahead with the first question then. And that is, true or false, over half of contact centers still use spreadsheets for QA. Is it A, true, or B, false? I'll give you all a couple of moments to answer this one. This comes from a call center helper report from a couple of years ago, actually. But yeah, let's see if contact centers are still using spreadsheets for QA. I'll give you everybody a couple more moments to get your votes in before I skip on to the next one. Excellent. So yeah, most people getting that one right, which is great. 51.1% of contact centers are still using spreadsheets for QA as a method of filling in scorecards and or collating the results. But as you can see, their quality monitoring systems are catching up fast, and I'm sure Lauren will tell us a bit more about kind of the latest innovations in that space shortly. Yeah, so let's go on to the next question. What percentage of contact centers say that there is a good match between their quality and CSAT scores? Is it A, 14.6%, B, 34.6%, C, 54.6%, or D, 74.6%? Sorry, lots of 0.6% there confusing me. But yeah, be interesting to see what everybody responds on this one. Of course, it's great to have a good combination between your quality and customer satisfaction scores, a good correlation there, and I'll tell you all why shortly. But I'll give you all a couple more moments to put in your answers for this one. Excellent stuff. So yeah, a lot of people getting that one right there, 54.6%. So it's important that your quality scores align with your satisfaction scores, as that indicates that you are measuring what means most to your customers. And if you're, this is especially the case if your kind of key goal for your scorecard is the customer satisfaction and customer experience. So yeah, let's go on to the next question. And this is, which of the following practices would Tom not recommend for quality calibration sessions? Is it A, assigning a quality leader, B, comparing scores from different analysts, C, creating a combined scorecard, or D, focusing on a different call type in each session? So yeah, this one's a bit more tricky, I think. So, but yeah, so I'll read the question out again. Which of the following practices would Tom not recommend for quality calibration sessions? Is it A, assigning a quality leader, B, comparing scores from different analysts, C, creating a combined scorecard, or D, focusing on a different call type in each session? So quickly give everybody a couple more moments. Excellent stuff. Yeah, a lot of people, actually most people are getting that one right there. So in a call center helper article, Tom stated that people who have the loudest voices and strongest opinions dictate the conversation, while people who have quiet opinions but are afraid of speaking can keep quiet. I think that's interesting point there, and it's always great to kind of hear about quality calibration sessions and how they are best used. But let's move on to the final question now, and that bottle of champagne or box of chocolates is still up for grabs, and that is, who said most people do not listen with the intent to understand, they listen with the intent to reply? Was it A, Dale Carnegie, B, Catherine Graham, C, Simon Sinek, or D, Stephen Covey? So yeah, I'll quickly give everybody a couple moments to answer that one. So is it A, Dale Carnegie, B, Catherine Graham, C, Simon Sinek, or D, Stephen Covey? Excellent stuff. Yeah, so again, most people getting that one right, and that was Stephen Covey. And another great Stephen Covey quote that links well to the contact center is, seek first to understand, then to be understood. And the winner today is Diane. So congratulations, Diane, for getting all of those questions right. It's very impressive indeed. And we'll be in touch with you after the webinar about the prize. Yeah, so congrats again. And it's great. But now we'll quickly move on with today's webinar. And our next presentation is from Lauren. So I'll stop sharing my screen, Lauren, and let you start sharing your slides.
Okay. Can you hear me okay as well?
Yeah, all's good.
All right, tell me if you could see my screen too.
Yes, I can see your blue home screen at the moment.
Oh geez. All right. Let me share.
What I'll do is it might be on your, there we go, perfect, yeah.
Okay. Gee, I thought I would get that right. Still, all right. Well, thank you for inviting me today. And my tip here to talk about is transforming the customer experience and the employee experience with AI-enabled quality management. So why am I talking about that? Really, we've witnessed a transformation in customer experience. And so this transformation began years ago, but has really accelerated in the past with the start of the pandemic. In fact, in Boston, it's exactly, today's the year anniversary since we were locked down. So not a anniversary I want to remember, but anyway, so those that were really, we've worked with a lot of customers in the past year, and those that were able to adapt to this changing environment were using artificial intelligence to drive more insights and automation from their quality program. So we also noticed that the contact centers that were using older technology, to solve this challenge, really got left behind. As part of this transformation, customers are expecting more and more than ever before. They expect that their experiences will be effortless, that they'll be personalized, and that they'll be treated well. And this is from a survey that we had done several years ago. But those organizations that have met those expectations were rewarded. We know that they're willing to buy more from the company that they're doing business with after that exceptional experience. So organizations know that they really need to compete in today's customer experience economy by differentiating their services. And one of the best opportunities to impact customer experience is during the actual interaction between the agent and the customer. And that is why agent performance and the ability to assess what's happening at that interaction level is so important. But the reality of the situation, especially during the pandemic, is that the programs that we're using, especially if they're based on spreadsheets, aren't very effective during this pandemic and beyond. The reason being is that the quality leaders believe the quality results and scores and program itself isn't helping their organization be successful. So they're not using the results of the quality program to make strategic decisions. And even worse yet, agents don't believe that the QA program can help them be successful. So why is that? What challenges are these organizations facing in delivering exceptional customer experience? And that is threefold. So the first is measuring what matters most. And that really what matters most in many situations is that the agent's soft skill behaviors are important. That is what's driving customer experience. And I'm talking about empathy, demonstrating ownership, or active listening. All those skills are really important. But it's not really being measured today because they're really difficult to define and they're very subjective. So even when we try to define them, it's not being assessed consistently. And then what is being measured is adhering to greetings, reading disclosure statements, following scripts. All of these things are great, but they're really not tied to customer experience. They tend to be inward focused metrics and not outward. So the next is the quality programs, and we saw 50% or so are manual. If they're based on spreadsheets, they're definitely manual. And so people are manually listening to interactions, filling out evaluation forms, and it's a very expensive program. It's very tedious for the evaluators, and as a result, they can only really afford to evaluate a very small sample of interactions. In fact, 99% of agent interactions are not even being considered in the performance of the agent. Which brings me to the third issue, agent engagement. They're really not engaged because they're not getting enough or the right kind of feedback because it's based on such a small sample. And because of that, they really have no buy-in into the QA program. And when you combine all of these challenges with the fact that many agents are now working from home and therefore don't have the visibility by their supervisors that are walking around, the stakes have really even become higher. So for organizations to deliver on their CX targets, it really requires two things. First, to use analytics to measure what matters most. And this is twofold. They need a predictive and interpretive model for sentiment. Sentiment actually measures customer satisfaction, and the sentiment is delivered in a score. And also, they need to score agent behaviors with behavior models. And it will be, these behaviors directly influence the sentiment score. And this is done on every single interaction. So these models should be built from millions of interactions of data for accuracy, and they need to be available to use out of the box. We found that contact centers don't have a lot of time to, and resources to try to have a science project to get them running. So once you have this data, you need to be able to act on insights with automated quality management, and do it in a way that engages agents with targeted coaching and self-learning tools, so that they can actually pinpoint exactly where agents need to improve their skills as well. And then the second thing is to have dashboards that are provided to every stakeholder. So everyone that has a stake in the quality program, agents, supervisors, and senior management, can see how they're doing according to their metrics and what their contribution is. So let's take a look at this in a little more detail in action, and see how AI-enabled quality management can help deliver those insights that are efficient, consistent, and objective. And it is done in every step of the quality program process. So first step would be to measure. Pretend you're the supervisor, you have a dashboard, and you can look at your sentiment score for your agents and how it's trending. You could see that it's trending down, and this is based on the model for both sentiment and behavior models. So you know it's being scored on every single interaction. So if I were the supervisor and wanted to see that why the sentiment score was going down, I'd want to identify what the drivers are for that. And you should be able to pinpoint down to the agent level and the behaviors that are actually driving that sentiment score that's aggregated at your dashboard down. So I could see for one particular agent that they're doing really very well on setting expectations and effective questioning on one of their interactions, or a group of them. They're doing okay with owning the problem, but could use work very specifically on demonstrating empathy. So from there, I can prepare for a coaching session by evaluating that interaction. With an evaluation form, it could be pre-populated with the answer to soft skill questions, so it really saves time on the evaluation process. You know exactly what interaction to evaluate, and the answers are directed for you. So here you can use this evaluation to validate what needs to be done and what the next actions are, which this supervisor decided that they wanted to send a coaching package, schedule it, auto-schedule it, provide links to knowledge base, and have that agent take this, do the self-study before they meet. So, and what's even more important is the agent has access to this information, can see that they're also not performing in this area, and can be more proactive and start, before they even get this coaching package, actually go into the knowledge base and do some self-study and self-evaluate on those interactions. So they can see examples of where empathy where empathy was exhibited, and calls where they needed help. So once the supervisor and agent meet, the supervisor then can proceed to monitor those different sentiment scores and behaviors and see that empathy has improved. So of course, this is a cyclical process. So the supervisor would go on to looking for different behaviors in different agents to coach in order to maintain a high sentiment score. So this process is actually in play today at many of our customer sites. They're using Nice Enlighten for customer satisfaction. And it is, sorry about that, providing results at all levels of the organization, management level, team, and even with the agents. You could see that TMPS is what they were using to measure customer satisfaction, increased in 28% in just 4 months. They were able to do more with less, I would say, or the same amount of resources. So there was more supervisors. The supervisor was able to handle in 25% more agents in terms of evaluations. At the same time, they were able to reduce their listening time on interactions. And finally, the agents really bought into this program. They said that they love being measured for all of their work, not just 6 calls a month. So this is the result. They were able to measure what matters most, automate quality, and engage agents. Thanks. Now I'll open it up for questions.
Excellent, great. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Lauren. What I'm going to quickly do for everybody now is just launch a poll question, and that will be, would you like to see a demonstration of any of the solutions that Lauren was talking about? And I'll quickly leave that up just in case anybody wants to answer that one. But some really interesting insights there, Lauren. I really thought that statistic that you showed with only 9% of agents feel that their QA program helps them feel successful was a particularly worrying stat, but some very interesting ideas as well in terms of engaging agents with targeted coaching and learning tools was good, and kind of the whole process of dashboarding to make it easy for leaders who aren't in the contact center anymore to easily see who needs help with what was very interesting. And yeah, very interesting to the technology. I think it shows kind of a lot of the latest innovations within the QA field, and it's some very exciting stuff. What I'm going to quickly do there is to finish off the webinar, let's go through some of the top tips and questions that we've had coming in from the audience in the chat room. And so the first opinion is coming from Susan, who says, this is one of the things I include in training, quality, outlaying the form, listening to sample calls and off calls to have the team point out what's wrong and how to correct it, with weekly updates around processes and changes. I think that's a really nice idea, that Susan. So thanks for sending that in. We have a tip saying use praise, encouragement, guidance, and support to motivate, develop, and build morale, which is nice. We now have a question in from Vicky, and that says, how do you feel about who gives the feedback, the line manager or the auditor? I don't know whether you have any thoughts on this one, Lauren.
I guess it would really depend on the organization and how they're set up. I mean, I've seen it both ways, but what's most important is that the line manager and the auditor or the quality team member work as a team to try to, I see Tom shaking his head, to try to, help improve performance together. We've seen that as the key to being successful, and not having that adversarial between the two groups, but to work together and that have a united front when it comes to improving customer satisfaction.
Yeah, so I guess, Tom, you very much go along with what Lauren was saying there.
Yes, absolutely. I think we've seen pros to cons to both. And I think sometimes, I mentioned in the chat room, that a combination of both can be helpful because it gives the agent maybe a little bit slightly different perspective. But as Lauren said, if the two aren't aligned and together, it can create problems. So that's the key.
Yeah, I think some very nice insights there. So we have a question now from Fran, who says, with the advances in tech such as web chat, what top tips are there to ensure quality in service through these ever-changing channels? I'll come to you for Miranda on this. I don't know if you have any thoughts on this one.
I do, and I did. I was trying
Sorry,
to
I
leap in
was
on the
worried I
last
thought I cut you
one.
off.
So I sort of have a firm view. I'm happy to answer this one as well. But I have a firm view on the last one, which is actually, I think that the when things are working really well, the line manager is should be the funnel for stuff that goes to their team, because I think it allows them, if there is a need for challenge around the findings of an audit, they can do that. So, and also bringing together, so if you look at somebody's development as a whole, that would only form one part of it. So making sure that people aren't bombarded from different points in an organisation, and things come together in a holistic plan of development. So that's definitely, we would be encouraging organisations to work so I'm seen as a team leader, I'm seen as somebody who supports every aspect of the development of my team as a safe space.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry for cutting you off.
That's all right.
Sorry for cutting you off on that one. But yeah, thanks. I think 3 really great answers there. And I know obviously with the advances in tech in this question, Lauren, I'm sure you have an opinion on this one too.
No, I talk a lot, and we always talk about phone calls being evaluated. Everything I just presented, you probably thought I was talking only about phone, but it's actually the solution you use should be able to handle digital interactions as well. And just substitute what I said with phone with digital, and the equally it may have a different evaluation form, a different metrics, but you have to look at the agent more holistically and not just one aspect of their job. If they're also working on other areas of any kind of support they have for digital interactions should be evaluated as well.
Yeah, excellent. I think it's a very interesting response to this. And we have one last question coming in, and I think I'll put this one to you, Tom. And this is one you probably get all the time, I imagine. But this is, how would you score calls? Is it i.e. a number? Maybe, I don't know. I've seen smiley faces on smiley faces star systems. And have you ever used manage expectations format as in an employee review? Don't know if you have any thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go back to the question that you posed to me, early on in the webinar today about, it really comes back to outcomes and what are you trying to drive. I would typically say that using a 1 to 5 scenario, you have to understand that is going to enter subjectivity into the equation based upon the person that's doing the evaluation. And every contact center quality team has their share of people that are really hardcore QA Nazis and people that are on the other spectrum of just always wanting to give people the highest rating and then coach them on it. And so that just introduces noise into the data. So not to saying that it doesn't have its certain applications, but if you're really trying to objectively measure what happened in a scenario, then I would recommend being clearly defining objective behaviors, and then they did it, they didn't do it, or it didn't apply.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's a great answer, and I'm sure we could talk about all these top tips and questions. Still lots more in the chat room all afternoon, but I am going to have to kind of bring today's webinar to an end as it is 3 o'clock. But it will be really great to hear everybody in the audience's feedback. So if you could let us know in 1 or 2 words in the chat room, what did you like best about the webinar? That would be awesome. But before we close, we do have time for our winning tip, and the winner of the box of chocolates or bottle of champagne this week is Eric, and his winning tip was, in order to be effective, supervisors need to be listening to the calls so they truly understand what's happening in the call center. They should be the largest part of their jobs. By reducing this, it pulls them away from this critical component. I think that's a very nice winning tip there, Eric. So congratulations on winning the prize. We'll be in touch after the webinar about the prize. But yeah, again, I'm always asking for feedback. If you could also complete the survey when you leave the webinar, it's just 4 questions long. So yeah, if you could fill that one in, that would be awesome. And just a reminder that the webinar replay and slides are available later this afternoon at www.courseuntitled.com/recorded-webinars. And of course, we have lots more webinars coming up. So make sure you check out the website to find out all about those. But now there's just a bit of time to thank all of our speakers for joining me today. So thanks. We'll start with you, Miranda. Thanks for joining us today.
No, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and yeah, it was great to have you, as it was to have you and Tom and Lauren as well. So thanks, Tom.
Absolutely, it's great to be here. Thanks.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks to you, Lauren. Cheers. Excellent. So we'll be back again next week. But thanks everybody for watching, and yeah, we'll see you soon. Cheers.
Thanks all.